So first of all, thank you one and all for joining this presentation. So today I thought I'll discuss my experiences in games-based learning in the corporate world. Let me just get started with a story. In my company Cognizant, there was a delivery manager of a large Fortune 500 client which had revenues of 30 million USD. He was struggling with client retention. Client was very unhappy with the value delivered. He also had a lot of team attrition. So both from an employee engagement perspective and the client engagement perspective, it was a disaster during the years of 2010 and 2011. But over a period of a year's time, completely things changed over. During a client visit, the client was bowled over by the value articulated by the team. The business that was at risk of going away from Cognizant, in fact, turned around and we ended up getting 20% more business. The employee engagement index also shot up by 15%. The team also won the first prize in innovation at the company level, and that was my team, and the manager is me. So this is me and my team receiving the prize from the chairman of our company in 2012. The reason why I narrated that story was that was my first tryst with games-based learning. This was kind of like an accident that happened in my life, but it was a very positive accident, I would say. Now, I was thinking, was it a one-off fluke that something miraculously happened? I decided to experiment. In 2013-14, I moved away from delivery teams and I moved into the operations team, which basically is related to the profit and loss management. Here again, the struggle was similar. I had to educate a lot of folks on the profit and loss concepts, revenue management, different kinds of costs that you incur in running a business. It was all new because typically delivery managers on the ground, they are good at their delivery capabilities, people management capabilities, but when it came to finance, they found it very difficult to understand. And it was extremely essential for me that they understood the concepts in order that the operations initiatives be successful. So we tried out an experiment. What we decided was we designed a small snake and ladder kind of a game for explaining margin concepts, where the snakes stood for activities that brought down the margins, like where you incur costs, and the ladder stood for activities that boosted the revenues. And in order to educate the people on revenue forecasting concepts, we designed a simple Ludo-based game where the ground level managers started doing the forecasting, vetted it with their next level, and so on up to the leadership level. So both these were game-based learnings of the concepts. We took it to the teams. We conducted multiple fests across different cities and tried explaining the concepts through these games. And you know what happened? These were the feedbacks that we got. All of them just loved it. There was very high levels of engagement. Many people who did not understand the concepts, they were disconnected from it. They started saying, wow, this could be so interesting. They never thought that operations and finance as a field could be made interesting through games. And most importantly, they opened up, they shared the questions they had, the fears they had, and we were able to answer them. And there was a lot of positivity at the end. A typical session that is run through PowerPoints would never have got that kind of an engagement. People just came in, listened in, went back, but they kept doing the same old thing. But this was a very, very pleasant difference. So this made me think, and to top it, we again won the third prize at the corporate level for doing games-based learning for finance concepts. So I thought if one could be fluke, the second one can't be fluke. There must be some science behind it, right, as to why this is working. But before I did that, I thought, let me ask you all a quiz. This was based on a survey that a firm Deloitte did, a consultant by name Josh Bersin did for Deloitte. I would request you all to go through these questions that you see and try and choose the correct answer. Please type the answers in the chat window. For example, for the first question, what percent of the companies rated the work environments as complex? If you think the answer is A, just type 1A. If you think it's B, you type 1B. Request all the yeah. I'm able to see D from Atanu. Any other answers from others? Anand says it's A. Atanu says it's D. Okay. Nina says it's A. Okay, so thanks for answering them. So we'll go one question at a time, Mohammed, if you don't mind. So you think it's B for the first question, right? Okay. And Mullai Shanmugasundaram says it's C. Okay. The answer turns out to be D. 75% of the companies surveyed, and I think it's at least about 100 companies surveyed by Deloitte, the workers consider the work environments as complex. So let's move on to the second question. The percentage of millennials who feel that innovation is important to choosing workplaces. What do you think is the answer to question 2? D. Anand and Atanu feel it's C. Mullai feels it's C. Gopal and Mohammed feel it's D. The answer turns out to be D. But even if you consider C, which is 60%, it's fairly a high number. So we are looking at the survey results were actually 80%. So innovation is a lot more important to choosing a workplace according to the millennials. But C, again, as I told you, C is also a fairly high number. So it's definitely much more than the 50% mark. So let's move on to the third question. What percentage of the organizations feel that there is a need to reinvent learning and development? Atanu says it's A. Nina says it's A. Mohammed says it's C. Anand says it's C and Mullai says it's D. Well, actually the answer again turns out to be D. Now, when you this may look surprising to some of us as to are people really keen on reinventing L&D at a 80% feel is there a need to reinvent L&D? When we think about L&D, we should not look at L&D as a department in our organization. We should look at learning and development as a process. Much after we move out of the academy or the learning teams in our respective companies, there is always a constant need for learning, even after we on a day-to-day basis. When you look at that perspective, many of the traditional learning mechanisms are not that effective. So in that context, this is seen as an 80%. So thanks Zishan for typing your answers. The answer to question 3 was D. Okay, moving on to question number 4. The number of the companies that have a program for simplifying work. Zishan says it's D. Atanu says it's D. Sushanta says it's D. Anand D. Nina D. Mullai D. Okay. There is a very big, I mean, all of you are concurring on this particular question. The answer is D. there is a very big need for simplifying work, and I'm assuming that that's true in your respective organizations also. It's not just a question of this survey, but do you agree that that's the case in the respective organizations where you work too? The need for simplifying work? Okay, yeah. So let's move on to one more quick true or false kind of question. In your respective organizations, just take a look at the context of where you are working and answer these questions. Let's answer the first question. Does your organization have change management initiatives, and do they get easily driven? Atanu says it's false. Nina says it's no. Anand says it's yes. Mullai says it's false. Okay, it's interesting, Anand. Your answer is yes. The rest of them seem to be saying no, but that's good to know. I'll try to connect with you offline. Let me try to understand better from you. So most of you feel change management initiatives are not easily driven in organizations. Okay. Now let's go to question 2. All of us deal with clients, and we have to keep communicating the value that we deliver to them. How easy and simple and straightforward is it? False. It's difficult, right? Gopal and Atanu say it's difficult. I think so far I've seen difficult as the answers from all of you. So we all agree that it's not very easy to communicate, articulate value to the clients. And let's move on to the third question. We've all attend training programs. How much is the retention rate, and how much are the people actually able to apply the knowledge post the training? Zishan says it's very less. Atanu says it's false. It's basically it's easy. It's not that easy. Gopal says it's low. Nina says it's low. Mullai says it's partial. So basically, all these 3 questions plus the survey questions that you answered are indicating at a particular trend that we need to be closely observant. There is a drastic need to simplify. There is a need to make learning social and fun. Basically, the fun element is missing. And most importantly, for learning to register, it needs to be experiential. Now, if I were conducting this workshop, if I had an opportunity to meet you all in person or do it over a Tanberg, I would not be walking you through slides, because I know this is not the most effective way of communicating. But given the limitations, I'm at least trying to make it interactive, because I would have actually done a game design workshop with all of you. But considering it's a webinar, I'm still trying to make the elements as engaging as possible. For learning to be effective, there has to be a simplification, a social element, a fun element, and an experiential element. Do you all agree? Okay, thank you. And in my experience, games-based learning is one very major way of achieving that. I'm not saying that that's the only way, but it's a very, very significant way in achieving high engagement learning. Now, having discussed so far, let's try to understand why games seem to be working. Now, let's imagine our childhood, or let's try to imagine our children or the children that whom we deal with, our nieces, nephews, whoever we interact with, right? If you ask them to go and solve a maths homework, or let's ask them to read an English textbook, what do you think their response would be? And compare it with asking them to play a game like Scrabble, Monopoly, or any kind of other board games. Where do you think they are likely to spend more time with? With the textbooks or with games? Yes, absolutely. Okay, Zishan's answer is very interesting. My daughter spends time with neither. Okay, let's connect later, Zishan. Games. I mean, all of us would have done that anyways, right? But if you closely observe, when you play a Monopoly or when you play Scrabble or any kind of game, you actually end up learning. You could end up learning new words from what others keep, or what others construct. You could end up, you would end up doing addition and subtraction, at least in Monopoly, and in some other higher sophisticated form of board games you will end up learning more detailed maths concepts, and you could go on for hours together with games, as even if you ask somebody to do homework for 10-15 minutes you get bugged, but if you ask them to play games it goes on forever. So this is one example from childhood. Now let's assume in the case of adults, right, a lot of us are health conscious. The health consciousness is spreading very rapidly. But if you had a choice of going to the gym, lifting weights, doing treadmills, right, in order to improve our body stamina, that's one choice we have. The other choice is we could go and play some games, volleyball, football, cricket, badminton, whatever be that. What would our preference be? Are any of you in the audience either? So Zishan says either, depending on the situation, okay? Anand says games, of course. Now if you closely observe, games are not just for fun. If you end up playing for an hour or so, the body parts do get sufficiently exercised, depending on the type of game you play. But you need to probably play it for slightly longer durations compared to an hour at the treadmill or a gym, right? But you can find out games that give you the same kind of health benefit that a gym would do. So there is something related to human psychology in both these examples, and because of the fun element embedded in the game, whatever you are actually ending up achieving is a lot more palatable to the mind. Now let's see the neuroscience behind games. There has been some scientific studies done to see whether games are really active, really effective. I'll not go into the technical terminologies, but there are apparently 3 parts of the brain that actually work much better when it is initiated with a games-based environment. One is typically when you learn, you get disengaged after a while. This is called default node processing. After a while you stop listening, your mind starts wandering. When you engage with a game, that default node processing gets inactivated, which means that you are more plugged in. Then there is a portion called ventral statium which aids in engagement, and that gets activated. And dopamine, you might have all heard of the hormone dopamine, right? That gets released. That causes heavy engagement, as in high levels of enthusiasm, energy, which makes you plugged in and concentrated. So this is actually been proven in scientific studies. So it's not just games are working for the sake of it, there is a science behind it. Now let's try to compare the, this is a study done by one of the famous games based learning companies called Raptivity. If you see, there are multiple dimensions that they have measured the traditional learning and games based learning. Take a look at that box. When it comes to engagement, games based is much superior, and the other important aspect of games based learning is the immediate feedback. Typically in a traditional learning you might have to sit through a classroom for hours together, and towards the end of it there will be a test. Whereas if you play a game like a snake and ladder or Monopoly, or it can be any form, I mean I'm just choosing some board games as examples. Imagine any game, anytime you act, your feedback is immediately given to you. This is one very important reason why games work. We all want instantaneous feedback. We don't want postponed feedback. The last aspect is you can tailor the learning pace to the needs of the individual. This usually does not happen in traditional learning, where a standard learning content is thrust upon all the learners. So moving on, here are some very interesting examples across different dimensions where serious games get used. There was an interesting case study in the company CSE. They had to collaborate with 3 or 4 other vendors to deliver a project. Now, the typical way it happens in vendor collaborations is that everybody gets into a boardroom. They start doing PowerPoint presentations. They start the standard formal method of exchanging ideas is what happens. Now, they wanted to avoid it. They engaged a game-based learning vendor, and they deployed game-based techniques and speeded up the project. They brought in the team collaboration, and they ended up, if I remember right, delivering something like 15 to 20 months ahead of time. Obviously the details were not fully available. I can share with you the link offline if any of you is interested. But productivity was the major benefit by bringing the team collaboration and enhancing the deliverable. Now, another useful case study is in the case of Deloitte. All of us, as you are aware, are prone to biases while conducting interviews. When we recruit, we all suffer from some kind of biases, positive or negative, right? We form judgments of the candidate. We try to miss out asking certain kind of questions, and post recruitment you realize that the candidate is not a right fit, despite the fact that you did your best in interviewing. Now, what Deloitte has done is, apart from the standard manager based interviews, they've designed they are piloting a game which will try to capture the behavioral and characteristics of the person being interviewed. The traits get revealed by the person playing a game, and they compare it and give it as a feedback to the recruiting manager. That is an additional data point before recruiting the candidate. This is one of the very novel and very useful applications of games. Of course, you have 2 other companies that have listed agile competencies, and the Scrum Alliance is deploying. Scrum Alliance is deploying for educational purposes. There is a last case study, a company by name Taos. Typically, there is a lot of disconnect between, particularly in large organizations, between the top management and the ground level employees. To bring everybody on the same page, a games-based approach was used to ensure that the employees clearly understand the goals of the management, and vice versa, the feedback from the employees also get understood by the top management. So this again is a common, this is also a unique case study that I came across in the industry. There are of course many more such case studies, but what I'm trying to highlight here is that games-based learning goes much beyond educational aspects. It could span across recruitment, productivity. It could span across company communications, etc. Now, moving on, let me move on to something that usually gets used interchangeably. The concept of games-based learning and gamification. Have you all heard of gamification? How many of you know the difference between gamification and games-based learning? Okay, Zishan says yes. Okay. Anybody else? Anand says no. Okay. Nina and Atanu say no. Okay, we'll try to understand the difference. But before we did that, just answer this question. In social media, let's say some of you are Facebook and LinkedIn users. I'm assuming at least one of the two you'll be using, or probably both. Do you end up spending You want to go into the website and just casually spend about 5-10 minutes, but you actually end up spending like 30 minutes, much more than what you planned. Does this happen? Please type your answers yes or no. Okay, almost all of you say yes. Do you know why? Now let's see the answer as to why we do this. Let's take Facebook. Facebook uses gamification. Zishan is definitely knowledgeable. I think Zishan, we will connect offline. I'll probably take some insights from you. Human intention to snoop is one probable dimension, definitely. I don't deny that. But there are other aspects that we'll try to understand from this slide. There are the human behavior or the motivational the motivational aspects of humans. There are 8 dimensions, as you can see here. We want to have, all of us want to have a sense of accomplishment. We want to have a sense of ownership in whatever we do. We would like to have scarce things, right? I mean, we don't want to own what everybody owns. We want to kind of have own unique things. We want to avoid danger. We want to have a sense of thrill and adventure, sense of unpredictability. We are all driven socially, right? If somebody wants to do, we want to do it better. So there are multiple dimensions that drive human behavior, and Facebook gamification is kind of exploiting all of it, and that's the reason why we end up spending a lot of time in Facebook. If you see from accomplishment perspective, I'll not probably walk through each one of it, but this slide is self-evident. The more followers we gain, we feel that that's a sense of accomplishment. If somebody likes, shares, responds to our post, we feel a sense of thrill in it. We have a sense of enjoyment when we update our profile picture, when we see our friends, when we are able to see our memories, etc. Now, so all of this is fundamentally related to our core sense of thrill or enjoyment or accomplishment, and the various different examples, right? I mean, let's talk about empowerment. See, sharing photos. Let's say I did this workshop, I went to this restaurant. It is a way of communicating and expressing with others, right? So that gives a sense of I won't say accomplishment, empowerment, or let's say you did a seminar, let's say you did a presentation, let's say you received the prize, you want to share it with others. So all of these core behaviors are being leveraged by Facebook, and that's why we end up spending a lot more time on Facebook. Now let's go to LinkedIn. Just if you see, how many of you have seen this profile strength bar? I'm assuming you would have seen all of these 3 elements of LinkedIn. One is the profile strength, one is how many people have seen your profile, the metrics related to that, and the third is how many people have endorsed you on various different skills. Now just by showcasing these numbers to you, we are inherently I would say motivated, or inherently we get a feeling that we should do more of it. If that profile strength bar is probably just 75% filled, we know that there is something more to act on it. Just by showing that circle, that triggers the humans to go and see what is missing in my profile. How do I make it 100%? When it comes to viewing your profile, just the rank on the profile views, if it has gone down, hey, why is it gone down? Why are people not looking at my profile? That triggers the end user to act on it. The metric shows how popular you are. Then when it comes to endorsements, the LinkedIn also uses methods like those who use skills and endorsement get more profile views. So all of these are, people want to showcase more of themselves. They want to be known. So these are the elements of gamification which is related to the core behavior that gets exploited by these social sites, and social sites are just one such examples. We see motivation, gamification everywhere around in the world. But I just thought, because a lot of us use social media, these 2 examples might be appropriate. So moving on, these are the broad differences between gamification and games-based learning. Let me walk you through a couple of key examples only. I mean, this slide probably describes it in entirety. Gamification is a lower level, I would say, but the idea is to nudge somebody to take some action or make them do something, right? It's some kind of a small trigger, a reward, accomplishment, a feeling of accomplishment, a point or badge, etc. Some kind of nudge to make it more engaging. Whereas when you consider a games-based learning, it's a lot deeper. Just playing a game to learn a concept is a lot more rewarding. Like when you play a Monopoly or a Snake and Ladder or any game, you kind of get immersed in it. You don't really look for, definitely you look for points, you try to win, etc. But you get engaged a lot more into it. And it gives you a fuller learning experience. So as the slide says, the learning content is kind of morphed into the scenes of the game. So the real learning intent of Scrabble may be to improve our vocabulary. It kind of is not spelled out, but it kind of gets fitted into the game. And gamification, because it's just the initial triggers, taps the elements of motivation, it's a lot cheaper to do. Game-based learning is a far superior solution, and it takes a lot of time, and obviously it costs more. So this slide anyway talks about various different points, and I thought I'll just briefly touch on it. So that kind of is all that I wanted to mention in this presentation, just to give you an orientation of my own experience in terms of how games-based learning has worked very effectively for me under different circumstances, and how it's used in the industry. I gave you some illustrations and basically also highlighted the differences between gamification and games-based learning. To conclude, I would say these are two quotes that come to my mind as to why games and gamification work. It helps you to simplify. No matter how complicated the concepts are, if we cannot explain it in simple terms, we ourselves don't understand it well enough. This was a very famous quote by Einstein. And Benjamin Franklin gave another very thought-provoking quote. Usually, if you see typical traditional learnings, we tell concepts, right? Hey, this is what it is, this is what it is. And usually when we tell something, we forget. When we teach, there is a chance of remembering. If it's just factual narration, it gets forgotten. Teaching takes the engagement to the next level, and some kind of concepts get remembered and registered by the users. But gamification goes and taps the involvement part. People get fully involved, and that's why superior learning happens. So I think with this I'll conclude today's session. I'm opening it up for any Q&As if you have. Please type your questions on any of the topics discussed so far, and I'll be happy to answer it. Hello. Okay, how much is the Indian learning industry really into games-based learning? Okay, actually Indian learning is, there are quite a few companies and all corporates are seriously thinking about deploying gamification or games-based learning into their curriculum. It's still in the early stages, but it's growing very rapidly. And I'll answer one question at a time. Okay, let me take up Zishan's question first. I'll probably give you some metrics around it. I don't have it handy, but it's growing very rapidly. Specifically in the mobile-based learning, Zishan, you'll find a lot of mobile-based games coming up in the next few years. I'll share with you the statistics. I do have it, but not right now with me. I'll share it with you. Gopal's question was your organization supportive of your initiative, and if so, how were they involved? Okay. When I started this initiative, both the experiments that I shared in the beginning, were driven on my own. I would say that the organization gave me a free hand to experiment. I mean, they did not necessarily support in the beginning because for them also it was not new, it was something new, but they didn't oppose me, right? I mean, they didn't prevent me from doing. That itself is a great support. So they allowed me to experiment. They didn't probably fund or anything. When you say support, sometimes you feel that it could be in the form of allowing you to try, or the next level support could be the funding part. Luckily, the experiments that I did were not of high cost, and it was very low budget, but it had a very high impact. And so the funding support was not needed for me, and that I would say is true for all games-based learning initiatives. You don't really need a lot of funds, unless you want to digitize it, right? Unless you want to do it in a computer, or you want to make a web-based games, etc. It's a lot easy to do the prototypes. But once they saw the results, there was I would say definitely accomplishment, and I mean, I did get rewarded, and they gave me an opportunity to do consulting in the games-based learning area. Right now, I'm a part of a games-based learning consulting team. So they did acknowledge the what do you say, the results, and gave me opportunities to pursue. Do you know of, the next question from Atanu is, do you know of any games-based learning tools that are used in the industry? I can share with you some names of vendors who actually do games-based learning. One is Raptivity. They are a Pune-based company. There is a Nolscape company based out of I think Bangalore. There is another company called Kodak, Quodek, based out of Mumbai, and there is a company called eMantras, I think based out of Chennai. So there are quite a few vendors who develop games-based learning tools. And in the US, there is a company called LearnBright. I mean, there are plenty of vendors. If you want, I'll get you the list offline. Any reference sites, books? Okay, definitely. Once again, I'll try to share that with you. There is a Coursera course called Gamification offered by the University of Pennsylvania. That's a good course to learn gamification. There is another website which I'm not able to remember the URL. I'll try to share that with you all. There is a world-renowned person, Yukai Go, who has an excellent website on gamification. There is books on gamification. When you come to, there is a book by Ken, Application of Games-Based Learning, Effective Games-Based Learning. Once again, I'll share that in an email to you. Why is this approach not taking off? If it scores so well over the conventional methods? Okay, so it's very difficult, if you see, to change the convention. See, for whatever reason, the corporate world is all about PowerPoints, and we know that how ineffective PowerPoints are, right? And we know how ineffective the classroom trainings are. But things are slowly changing. In fact, the change will be very rapid. If you see in the next 4 to 5 years, or maybe a decade, definitely in the 4 to 5 years, you'll find a massive change in the learning process. We'll move away from classrooms. We'll have all kinds of engaging learning content. People are discovering it slowly. In fact, according to a Gartner report, gamification industry will be around 12 billion by 2019. So a lot of action is happening. It's in the I won't say it's just over the nascent state. It probably, the word gamification was coined sometime around 2010, 2011, and it has seen its improvement in the last 5-6 years. But it will see a much more rapid increase in the next 4 to 5 years. And people take time to change. So that's one reason why it's not taking off. One question to the Sabari and Sushma: is there any way by which I can share the answers to the questions to the participants, meaning like the books they asked and the websites they asked, etc.? Okay, Nina's question is, Is it being adopted in the area of academics as well? Yes, definitely it is being adopted in academics, and it has been scientifically proven, and once again I'll share with you articles that board games definitely cause higher engagement in students that traditional curriculum, traditional classrooms don't. Unfortunately, the adoption once again it's very slow now, but it's bound to improve. It's bound to improve because we know what is not working, both in the corporate workplace as well as in the in educational institutions. It's more of theory, lectures, the same old stuff. But engagement is going to be the key in the next couple of years. And I think in PGSEM we had a derivatives game. Possibly we had. I remember one game in the supply chain course. It's called the beer distribution game. Do you all remember that? I did PGSEM probably 10-11 years back. So that's one game I remembered. Possibly there was a derivatives game also. Okay, Sabri says that I can send him the PPT and the answers, and he'll be able to share with the participants. Okay, that will be great, Sabri. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we can wrap up. Yeah, Padmini Srinivasan used to use Monopoly to teach accounting. Excellent. I mean, it was not the case in our batch, but I'm very happy that Monopoly was used in your batch. I'm very happy. It would have been a lot more fun and engaging. In fact, just over 10 days back, there was an IIMB reunion in Chennai. Anusmaran happened in Chennai. I was talking to one of the current professors. He was asking me how to make finance learning fun, and I was giving him some websites and tips to make it fun. Monopoly was one of the games I recommended, and I'm glad that another professor is actively using it. So please do send any other questions or comments, and also definitely please take 2-3 minutes to fill this feedback form on how useful the session was. And if you have any areas to improve, please point it out. Just 1 minute, I'll send you the link for the feedback form. If you can take a couple of minutes to fill the feedback form. And I'll also share with you my email ID. If you have any further questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks, Mulai. Thanks, Zishan. Thanks, Gopal. Thank you all for taking the time on a Saturday to attend it. So I'm really grateful. Thanks, Atanu. Yeah, I'll just stop the recording now, and thank you all. Have a good weekend.